Hey guys, what's up? It's MrKmproductions, and today I wanted to show you a mod that I made a while ago. So you can see we're on version Oak 1.4.2, and this is a mod that I made starting in 1.3 that I never finished, and I wanted to show you all a little bit about what this mod was. And I don't know, I might pick it up one day, but I haven't really been modding for a while now, so I figured why not just show you all what it was back in the day. It's called Workers World, an alternate World War scenario. This version of the mod is called the World War. So this mod was supposed to be extremely huge. So there were 3 mods that combined into this world, okay? And I was supposed to make all 3 before releasing it. So let's go ahead and get into the mod. So it's July 1st, 1945, and this is what the world looks like. So it's a little different from, 1945. So welcome to the mod. This welcome screen, you guys can pause and read it if you want to. Sorry about any errors, but this is just the introduction here. I'll explain to you the scenario. It also includes expanded resources, and here's the world. So basically the idea of this mod is a couple key events happened that kind of changed the result of the war. So basically in 1943, the United States loses the battle for Midway, and Japan invades Midway and they take the island. This leads to the US worrying more about Hawaii and Alaska, and having to split their fronts mainly between the west and the east over here, because their navy obviously can't guard Midway, so what's to say they can guard these other 2 islands, right? So then the British are forced to kind of take up the helm with the invasion of Normandy, and the invasion ends up failing. Without the support of the US, or the total support of the US, they make their beachheads, but they get pushed out, which then frees up divisions for Germany to push the UK out of Italy. Now they're stuck on Sicily, and then to also reinforce the Soviet front. And I also neglected to mention, which is fairly important, why the Allied powers were weaker. And this is because at Dunkirk, the Germans ended up surrounding, and they didn't halt on the edge of the port. They actually pushed through and captured all of those Allied soldiers as prisoners. So the UK was already weaker. The US is at a disadvantaged position, and then once their invasion fails, the war is pretty much done for the Allies. Now, that's not to say Germany is winning. Basically, instead of the Allies having control over Western Europe, it will be the Soviets. So the Soviet blood is going to end up pushing through all of Europe here. So we can see Germany has 63 divisions, while the Soviets have like 300 and something, right? Basically, the idea is that Europe becomes communist. Most of the mainland here is communist, and then Asia remains fascist, because Japan does not have to worry about the USA island hopping over here, because their navy can control the Pacific. So they finish off China, and they look towards Alaska and Hawaii. I actually had a whole story written up, or in my head, and I started writing it about how this would go down, but I never finished it. So what you're seeing right here took this is probably about a month's worth of work, right? And this is for part 1 of the mod. There were still 2 more parts, and this wasn't everything I wanted to do. So if we continue the story in the east here, basically once Japan takes out China, they create a puppet state in China, and this threatens the Raj, which now sees the weakened state of the Allies and decides they want their independence. They don't want to be a part of this war. So independence movements start sparking up in India as well as Africa over here, right? So Japan does not invade the Raj. They just have troops stationed at the border, because they figure the independence movements will overthrow the British government in India, right? So they just leave their troops at the border, and they blockade all the ports in India so that British reinforcements can't come in. Next, they focus towards Hawaii, but they realize that the US is heavily defending Hawaii. So they actually end up invading Alaska and hold off in Canada. And then they aim towards Hawaii. Alright, that's kind of where I left off the story. So Japan invaded Alaska. They were about to invade Hawaii. The Germans were, basically Berlin was surrounded by this point. And this is mid-1948. So yeah, I won't leave a link to the story, but I hope I explained it well enough. I definitely think it's interesting. I don't know how realistic it is, but I thought it was pretty good, when I made it at least. Another thing to note is the UK is severely weakened because Germany actually ended up controlling the skies of the UK for a while. You can see here that the ships and planes are 0 and 0, and that's just because I hadn't finished making all their ships and all their planes and stuff. I have the troop divisions laid out, but that's about it. So if we look at the focus trees for each of the countries I made a German focus tree here. They are smaller. If I were to go back and do this mod, I would end up redoing all of these focus trees. But we can see we have the standard stuff over here and here with the army and the industry. Then we have all of these German projects that were planned for Germany after the war but never ended up happening, so you can do those as well. And then over here is what you're going to choose to do in the war. So are you going to try and go offensive with your 63 divisions, or are you going to try and defend the homeland? Kind of lackluster tree for Germany, but I would definitely go back and fix it if I ever went back to this mod. Then we have this right here which says Broken Nation, which is kind of basically the people are, you know, they're not happy about where the fascist ideology has led them. Next, the UK. They have their own focus tree, a little bit more expansive, and I'm not going to lie to you, I remember making this mod, but this is the first time I've opened the mod in forever. I had to re-download Oak just to run the mod. So we have our industry, military, so fractured empire, the British Empire is falling apart, the world is watching. How will British officials react to the tensions throughout the colonies, or what about the World War just 33 kilometers off the coast? Kind of interesting, I think. So seeds of change here. This is about the colonies, so do we hold on to our colonies and really try and keep them in the empire, or do we say, hey, let's just let you go, you know, we can have a better world? And then we have to deal with the Axis power, so we can seek peace negotiations, or we can fight to victory. So there's that stuff. Next, I believe the Soviet Union does have a tree. Soviet Union, industry, military, and then here Stalinism, Soviet sacrifice, just because of Stalin's complete lack and care for life, I guess. Spread communism or new ideals. This is just to, do you want to stay communist or do you not? War in the West here, you can destroy the Axis, unite the nation, and mess with the Allies, and then Eastern stuff as well for Japan. This one definitely has to get redone. I'm not sure if these were completed focuses. I don't think they were. I think they were just kind of like mock focus trees, get an idea of where I want to go. Let's tag over to Italy here. I believe they have one. They do. So once again, industry, military, Italian ambition stuff over here, your political ambitions, restructure the government, you can reinforce fascism or go to communist or democratic. Kind of boring. Definitely would have redone that. I also wanted to make a tree for the Raj because they would actually end up going through a civil war. Never got to it. Did I do Japan? I did. So let's tag to Japan. So Japan, they have industry, defense, military stuff. So they stick with fascism. That's all the stuff you can do in there. Or you can go and invade the Soviet Union, and then conquest or quest for materials. This is to kind of offset some of the problems you have by being on an island here. Oh, and I did make one for the USA too. I forgot about that. Once again, industry, military, worldly affairs. This is the USA specific stuff. So, intelligence, Japan, where are they going to invade, Alaska or Hawaii? You can get forts in Hawaii, and you can defend Alaska, or northern forts. Sorry, you can defend the north of the USA, since eventually Japan invades Alaska and Canada. And then for the campaign, you can go through democracy, or you can switch ideologies. And I think that's it. I also wanted to get a focus for France. I think in the end, France was going to have one, the Raj was going to have one, and it was going to release with like 7 focus trees. I was also going to end up doing technologies. I never got around to it, but because we're playing in 1945, I was going to end up adjusting all these dates and such. And because I was doing this all by myself, I think at the time it really was just a huge undertaking here. This is part 1, then I have to do part 2 and 3. Any change you make to any of them, any feature you have to add, you add 3 times. It was a lot. I do want to show you part 2, and the only thing I made in part 2 was an early version of the map. I had nothing going in part 3, but I did have a little bit for part 2. So let's go ahead and jump over to that. Alright, so welcome to the new world here. All under the Comintern in Europe. So we can see this is a very rough version of the map. I hate this so much, but it's okay. It's okay. It was a long time ago. So we have the Soviet Union here, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Austria, Yugoslavia, Italy, Germany, the People's United Provinces, the French Commune, nationalist Spain is still fascist, the UK is still democratic, so is the US. Another thing that's changed here is Japan. So they did finish taking off China. They are now a puppet of China. They're still at war with the British, but nothing's really happening too much there. And by now, I think India was supposed to be independent, so this isn't super representative of how it would look. But you can see that Japan did invade Alaska up here, and they are preparing to invade Hawaii. That's about it for part 2. I've had the map. You weren't really going to play in Europe unless you switched ideologies. You were mostly going to play as Japan and try and take out the US or Britain. And then part 3 was going to deal with Japan fascism versus the Soviets. And I think there were going to be some rebels or something in Europe. Honestly, not too sure. But I started this mod in early January, February 2017, I think, and I never really picked it up after. That was Workers World. I hope you enjoyed. I don't know, I think it's interesting, but you guys might not. But I want to make this video to show you, here's the mod that I never released, and not all projects are finished, not all projects make it to the workshop. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses. So right now, this mod does not have any development going on, but it's definitely an interesting idea, and maybe one day in the future, I will pick it back up again. That's about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next week, take care. Bye-bye.